Yo, what's going on guys, Arekkz here, welcome back to another Destiny video. It is now the third week of Age of Triumph, and that of course means it is time for a new weekly featured raid. This time it is King's Fall. As a reminder, anytime a raid is featured, all challenge modes are active, and unlike Vault of Glass, Crota's End and Wrath of the Machine, King's Fall is the only raid with 3 challenge modes. They're all active this week, and that of course means that is another source of an additional Age of Triumph ornament since they come from challenge completion. It is however worth noting that unlike Vault of Glass and Crota's End, which came back with some changes, King's Fall is identical to Year 2. No changes whatsoever, and that also applies to the challenge modes. They play out exactly the same. The only difference is that the raid is now 390 light, so of course enemies are slightly tougher, and if you do complete the challenge modes, then the bosses drop adept weapons. Besides that, everything else is the same. However, in the event that you guys haven't done this since last year, then I'm still going to put together a quick and dirty recap of the encounters, the challenge modes, what you guys need to do. So if you do find this helpful, then a like would be super appreciated. Comment down below if you have any questions, and also at the end of this video I will show you my loot. So for those of you guys that are wondering what I got, then stick around until then. It's also worth mentioning I will still be doing this guide with the assumption that you have done King's Fall before, but if you guys do want in-depth guides, I will link down below the guides that I put together last year when King's Fall came out, because they are still completely accurate and they will of course tell you everything you need to know about the fight. So if you need more information, check the links, but otherwise this video should cover your bases. Now, starting off with the very first encounter, this one, quite simply, hasn't changed at all. So you split your team into 3 teams of 2. 2 go left, 2 stay in the middle, and 2 go to the right. You simply need to go and grab the orbs, place them in the statues, and you repeat this process until the portal opens. Very simple, just make sure you don't get overrun by ads, and it will be done in a matter of minutes. Now, when you go through the portal, the very first chest, this is where you get your weekly Knuckles of AO. So for those of you guys that are looking for them to try and help with your drops, then this is where you get them. Of course, in each raid they do come from typically the very beginning. Vault of Glass, the first chest, Crota's End is the Abyss, and for King's Fall, it is of course right here. Moving on from there, no changes to the jumping puzzle. So the room before the Warpriest, this again plays out identical. So you want to split your team into 2 teams of 3. 1 team will be assigned to the left, 1 team will be assigned to the right. You leave 2 people in the middle, and then 2 go to the right, 2 go to the left, and you basically go stand on the platforms, dealing with the ads until of course your timer runs out. You then run to the center, and you then consume your stacks in the middle while standing on the middle plate, and of course you swap your teammates, and you repeat this process until the door is complete. This one is again identical, so I'm not going to go over the finer details, but if you do want to find this out or you haven't done this before, then check out the video down below because that will explain what you need to do. Now, Warpriest, as a reminder, the challenge for this, quite simply, is that you cannot have the same person as a brand holder. During this fight, you'll stand on the platforms to activate it, and then of course once you've dealt with the ads, there will come a point where the pillars in the middle will light up in an order, and they indicate the order that you should stand on the platforms. The last person to stand on the platform, whether it be left, middle or right, will then get the brand of the initiate applied to them, and this of course has 5 stacks and it lasts for 10 seconds. Of course, killing an enemy will refresh that timer, but every time you kill an enemy you lose one of your stacks, so this is basically your window to deal damage. In order to complete the challenge, the same person cannot hold the brand of the initiate again. So for argument's sake, in this situation, TVMV is our first branded initiate holder. After the first damage phase, he cannot hold it again. Even if the right platform needs to be stood on, it would then have to go to me, or in this case Hayden, and you would then continue that process until the boss is done. So quite simply, defeat the boss without having the same brand holder. As a reminder, of course, you stand inside the brand in order to deal damage to the Warpriest, and of course if you stack that with a Weapons of Light bubble, then you can get out some pretty nice damage. If you do this correctly, and you use things like Black Spindle or Sleeper, then you could typically do this in 2 rotations. Most of us were using Black Spindle, but Sleeper Simulant is also a very good option. One of those 2 weapons will probably be your go-to. Moving on from there, the maze again is not any different, and if you do open the chest, you just get things like legendary engrams or worm spore or armor material, so it's really not worth your time. So going over to Golgoroth, again, the challenge for this is that every single person must hold Golgoroth's gaze during a damage rotation. So as a recap, the way the Golgoroth fight works is that he then comes out the ground, you then deal with ads for a while, somebody takes his gaze by shooting him in the back, and then while that happens, the rest of the team shoot one of the orbs from the ceiling, it then drops on the ground, and you stand in the puddle that it creates, and when you're standing in there, you can then deal damage to his stomach. Of course, all whilst this is happening, the person that originally took his gaze has a timer. When that timer runs out, if nobody else has taken the gaze, then a text prompt will show up on screen saying you have failed to capture Golgoroth's gaze, and you will then need to repeat a cycle. However, if you want to complete the challenge mode, as mentioned, every single person needs to hold his gaze. Now, there are a variety of different ways you can do this. However, by far the easiest way, and of course if you're going to be doing this through things like LFG, or you don't necessarily have a dedicated raid group, the easiest way to do this is what is known as the one orb strat. Quite simply, you deal with the ads, and when it's time to deal damage to Golgoroth, one person shoots him in the back and takes his gaze. Meanwhile, the rest of the team drop the orb and stand in the middle to deal damage. You then call out your timer, you count down, and then once your timer gets low, someone jumps out, takes the gaze from you by shooting him in the back again, and then everyone else piles out and you simply exchange his gaze by shooting in the back until every single person in your group has held it. So the easiest way to do this is to number your team 1 through 6. So the very first person to take his gaze will be 1, the person that then takes it from that person will be 2, and then when everyone's jumped out, you simply go 3, 4, 5, 6 until everyone has held his gaze. You then deal with the orbs, you will then fail to take his gaze because of course you've completed the cycle, and you repeat this process. If you do that, the one orb strat, you can typically take him out in 3 to 4 rotations. Of course, depending on where his health gets to, when he gets very low on health, the hive enemies will swap out with Taken, so of course you'll have to deal with them. But principally, that is by far the easiest way to do it and the most reliable way to do it, especially if you're going through things like LFG and you don't necessarily have a coordinated raid team. Of course, if you do have a team like that, you can do it without doing one orb. You can just jump and juggle the orbs, but that gets a little bit complicated. So for the time being, that is the easiest way to do it. So as a reminder, per damage rotation, every single person must hold his gaze. So if it takes you 3 or 4 rotations, that means each person must have held his gaze 3 or 4 times. Now, with that out of the way, we're then moving on to the daughters. Of course, there is no challenge mode associated with this, so this is very simple. One person in your team at random will be torn between dimensions. They will then need to jump on the platforms that you spawn by standing on the corresponding platforms in the arena. If the orb that you need to collect spawns above, say, the front right platform, you then need to work counterclockwise from the adjacent platform. So if front right is where the orb is, you will then go front left and stand on there to begin with, and you will then work your way to back left, back right, and then front right, and you will then grab the brand. You use this to dunk on one of the 2 daughters. You want to focus on the one that is not singing, i.e. the one that doesn't have the red flames on. Once you've done that, you will then get the aura of unraveling. You can then stand down with your team inside this bubble. You're completely immune, and you can then deal damage to the daughter. Ideally, you want to kill her in 1 rotation. If everyone has Touch of Malice, this will be very simple to do. Kill the daughter, repeat the process. Someone gets nominated to go between dimensions. They then jump across the platforms, grab the brand, take the shield off of the other daughter, deal damage, and then destroy her from there. Again, pretty simple, pretty straightforward, identical to how it was done before, so there is no changes there. Best weapon to use for this is definitely Touch of Malice. Finally, moving over to Oryx, the challenge mode for this, quite simply, is the 16 orb strat. So instead of detonating the orbs on a turn-by-turn basis, you instead complete 4 rotations so that there are 16 orbs stacked together. And then on the final damage rotation, you detonate all of them together, taking Oryx's health from 100 to 0 in one fell swoop. As a reminder, in this, you want to assign people to the platform, so 1, 2, 3, and 4. Have one person be your roaming damage dealer in the middle, who can then jump in to assist people. And have one person, who's me in this case, as your dedicated runner jumper who goes between dimensions. Again, much like before, you will then work counterclockwise across the platforms to form the platforms. You grab the brand, you use that to take the brand off of the knight that spawns, and then everyone stands in the bubble. Deals damage to Oryx once he slams down, so you can make him flinch. And of course, following this phase, you will then wait in the bubble instead of going out to detonate the orbs. Don't forget, however, that because you are skipping the orb detonation phase, you will then have nothing but teleport phases, as opposed to the phase where you have to run away from Oryx trying to kind of detonate the ground. So you simply teleport in, defeat the Shade of Oryx, come back out, repeat the cycle until you have 16 orbs on the ground, detonate them all, shoot Oryx, and then don't forget that when you think he's dead, he's not quite dead. You deal damage to him at the very end, and then he is done. So that is a quick and dirty recap of the challenge modes. Of course, if you guys have done these raids before, then of course that will make complete sense to you. If, however, you finish watching this guide thinking I still don't understand what I'm supposed to be doing, then you should probably go back and check out my detailed guides that explain every aspect of the fight. I will link them all down below. There is one for the Warpriest, and of course the room before him, one for Golgoroth, one for the daughters, and one for Oryx. So if you're in any way, shape or form confused about the fight, then definitely check those out because they will explain everything that you need to know. However, now before I wrap up the video, let me just turn your attention to my loot. Unfortunately, this week I didn't actually get a lot of great loot. Vault of Glass and Corsair were supremely generous to the point where I got tons of weapons, tons of gear, whereas King's Fall, I completed it and the only piece of gear I got was the cape. And the only weapons I got were the pulse rifle, the auto rifle, and the scout rifle. Besides that, I got absolutely nothing. So for those of you guys that want to see them in detail, Smite Marine, of course, they have this cool purple and black colour scheme, this sort of like inverted colour scheme. Actually looks pretty cool. I do quite like it. I've always liked the way that these weapons look with all the spikes on them. Main perks on these, of course, you have Will of Light, so the weapon deals bonus damage against taken enemies. You also have Cocoon, so when stowed for a short time, the weapon automatically reloads from your reserves. And finally, you have Firefly, so precision kills with this weapon can cause targets to explode. It's my understanding that all the exotic or the adept weapons have fixed rolls, so if you get this, you should get it with Firefly. As for the auto rifle, Anguish of Dristan, this one once again has Will of Light, so again bonus damage to taken enemies. You have Cocoon, again, all these weapons have that, and this one has crowd control, so kills with this weapon grant bonus damage for a short time, and this is of course what it looks like. And then finally, Doom of Chelchis. I actually really like this weapon. This one again comes with a Cocoon, but this time it has full auto, so the weapon can be fired in full auto. You actually have this cool white line across the top, so this is what it looks like. I did also get a legendary version of the Smite Moraine as well, so I have a 400 version for that. But besides that, the only other thing I got was the Cloak. Now this one I actually really like. I never really liked it during the time it was first introduced because the original version wasn't that cool, but I do like how it's got this kind of raptor horn on the top of it. Doesn't match my Vex gear, but does go nicely with the sort of hive look that I had on my Hunter beforehand. So if I go into here and inspect it, you can of course see that without the ornament, it then has the typical bones on the back like that, and the hood at the front looks like that. But if you then put the ornament on, it instead looks pretty cool. Also for the perks, this one has Intellect, Discipline, Hand Cannon Focus, Machine Gun Focus, and Vanguard Champion. But of course, again, taking a look at that hood, looks pretty sweet. Probably not in this colour scheme. If I go and throw on something a little bit more, I don't know, applicable, maybe Black Cloak, that looks kind of cool, or maybe this red one. Will that work out? Something like that. Either way, you get the idea. Looks pretty sweet, but that is pretty much it. So, hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. Hopefully that was helpful to you. Again, if you have any confusions, then definitely check out the videos linked down below. But that is it for King's Fall this week. The same will apply to Wrath of the Machine next week. There will not be any changes. It will be identical. So I'll do a kind of very quick and sort of dirty recap video again. But that is pretty much it. I'll also make sure that the weekly reset videos return once the first cycle of raids are done. I've just been kind of skipping them over because every single time reset goes live, I dive straight into the raids. So I don't necessarily do the weekly reset. But after next week, I will then return to that. So for those of you guys that do enjoy it and do find it helpful, that is coming back. Anyway, thank you for watching. Take it easy. Catch you next time. Peace out.